Hi, my name is Kayla Wolf. This is NSG 409. This is my course video final project on the ethical case of Nurse Wubbles. The ethical issue and dilemma being discussed is in 2017 in Salt Lake City, a nurse named Alex Wubbles was videotaped being arrested by police for refusing to draw blood from her unconscious patient. The police officer had told Nurse Wubbles to draw the patient's blood. She politely informed the police officer that the police could not collect any samples from a badly injured patient. This was a hospital policy. She had pointed out that the police officer did not have a warrant, that the patient was unconscious, meaning that she was not able to obtain consent from the patient. Wubbles was seen in the officer's body footage camera with a printout citing the hospital's policy. This ended with Nurse Wubbles in handcuffs and being placed in the police car. From the nurse's perspective, an analysis of this dilemma would be that the Nurse Wubbles honored her commitment to the patient and the nursing profession. Provision 1 of the ANA Code of Ethics states the nurse in all professional relationships practices with compassion and the recognition of human dignity and worth that is present in every individual. Provision 3 of the ANA Code of Ethics states the nurse promotes, advocates for, and protects the rights, health, and safety of the patient. By refusing to draw the patient's blood, she is advocating for the rights of her patient and protecting her patient. She had honored the dignity of her patient and her patient's rights since she had not received consent and this patient was unconscious, so therefore she was not able to receive consent. Nurse Wubbles honored her patient's autonomy by refusing to draw blood without the patient consent. The principle of autonomy in our textbook is the capacity to have the say-so about your own well-being. Since the patient was unconscious, the nurse had no way to obtain patient consent. Nurse Wubbles also followed the ethical principle of non-maleficence, which is the duty to do no harm. She did this by refusing to draw the blood of her unconscious patient since he was not able to protect himself. She had the right to protect him. The ethical theory Nurse Wubbles followed was the deontologic theory, which holds that you are acting rightly when you act accordingly to duties and rights. Nurse Wubbles was acting on her professional duty to respect and protect the dignity of her patient and protect her patient from harm while unconscious and having no way of receiving consent. Nurse Wubbles' professional nursing responsibility was to respect the patient's rights and keep her patient safe. So she honored the organizational's policy for patient care. The patient may be considered as a vulnerable patient in the view of society. Since the police officer wanted to obtain blood from the patient, society may assume this patient gave the police officer the impression that they were under the influence, and that is what caused the motor vehicle crash. But every patient has the right to privacy and the right to respect. Using Doherty's and Using the 6-step process of ethical decision-making in our textbook, step 1, I'd want to gather relevant information. As the nurse in this case, I'd want to know why the police officer was so persistent about me obtaining a blood specimen from the unconscious patient. I'd want to review the hospital policy on consent for blood draws in regards to unconscious patient. I would also want to receive backup from my nurse manager if I was unsure or ask for help from someone from the ethics committee. Step 2, I'd want to identify the type of ethical problem. If I were in this position, I would think that I would be experiencing moral distress, as the nurse has the duty to protect her patient and abide to hospital policy since this is under her nursing license and her job at stake. But at the same time, we'd want to respect the police officer's authority and comply to what he's asking for. Step 3, we'd want to use the ethics theories or approaches to analyze the problem. As stated in previous slides, the ethical theory this case presents is the deontologic theory, which involves the nurse's duty is first to her patient to advocate and protect the patient's safety by not drawing his blood without consent. This patient is also unconscious, so she has the duty to advocate for him. 4 of the 6-step process of ethical decision-making would be to explore the practical alternative. If I were the nurse in the situation, I would want to contact a member of the ethics committee to back me up. Step 5, I would want to complete the action. I think an appropriate measure in this situation would be to provide nursing hospital staff with an educational in-service on the hospital's policy of obtaining a blood specimen without consent on an unconscious patient, as well as other ethical dilemmas and what they would do in those situations. Step 6, evaluate the process and outcome. After the educational in-service, I would provide staff with a written quiz on ethical dilemmas like the one involved to see how they would handle it appropriately and go from there to see if their responses are appropriate. Then I would know that more education is needed.